You know, every week I say that I'm not going to do water effect anymore. And every week I do it because there's something so refreshing about a waterfall. I'm Dorothy Wilhelm, hopefully about to present you with some refreshing video. And today I have a very special guest to share that video with. It's historian Don Trosper. And Don, hello, my dear.
Hello.
Don and I share an interest in history. And Don, tell me a little bit. You actually have more right than most to share historical information. Tell me all about yourself, kid.
Well, I could talk about Tumwater first of all, but I know the one thing you wanted me to do is talk about my family tree,
yes,
the ancestry and so on. So I guess I could talk about that first. But Trosper Road is the main thoroughfare from the Interstate 5 back to Black Lake, and we're named for my great grandfather, who in 1892 bought from Uncle Jesse Ferguson 60 acres of his homestead. He was one of the pioneers of Tumwater, the first permanent American community north of the Columbia, Uncle Jesse. And he was a young single guy at the time when they arrived off the Oregon Trail. And so he only got half a section of land for free, where the married couples got a full section. So that's a lot of acreage. And so he sold 60 acres, and we still have 25 acres left of that original that we still live on. And the Trosper homestead has been there since 1892.
And he was, as we say, a hunk.
Well, that's right. I never got to know him in person because he died at the turn of the century, but he was a big part of our family, and we honor him a lot. And the Simmons Bush party came with him and founded Tumwater and started that. It was British territory at the time with the Hudson Bay Company. And so we were the first Americans to have a settlement here.
Well, and of course, as you know, that's one of my very favorite stories. We were going to subtly sneak in the fact that you're not the only historian here.
Yes. There you go.
I can't get it. But anyway, this is True Tales of Puget Sound. Now, I'm not famous enough to have relatives who were pioneers here, but I had a real interest in the wonderful story of the people that came here first. And of course, the Simmons Bush wagon train, I had never known that the interesting thing was that George Bush was his name. And he and Michael Simmons came out from the East as leaders of this wagon train, got to Oregon where they were hoping for a donation claim property.
Yeah.
And this is my story now. And the people, when they got there, the people there in Oregon who were in charge of these things came out and said to Michael Simmons, well, you're okay, you can stay, but we don't want his kind here. Speaking of George Bush. Of course, George Bush was black. And what I had not known was that it was actually illegal to be black. Illegal. And people were whipped every 6 weeks. Hard to get people to line up for that, you know. And so when I heard all of that, the Simmons Bush party, which you know very well, spent 2 winters then on the Columbia River creating flatboats to bring their belongings to where? Ta-da!
Well, what's now the town of Toledo in Lewis County is where it ended, and then they went overland from there to Tumwater.
Now, there's Tumwater. Why on earth would anybody want to live in a place called Tumwater?
Well, it was named Newmarket at the beginning because you talked about your waterfalls in the beginning of your session here. We are famous for the waterfalls of the Deschutes River, and that was water-powered industry for grist mills and sawmills, and that's what drew the Simmons Bush party to this town that we named Tumwater. He named it Newmarket at first, but the other pioneers didn't like that name, so they took the Indian name of Tumchuck, or Noisy Water, and they Americanized that, and it became Tumwater, and that's the name that stuck.
What strikes your heart most when you're writing? When you've written, what did you say, 4 books, 5 books?
Yeah, four. I'm working on number four of the number three of the Tumwater series, and then there's another books or two. I've worked on the Tumwater School District history and all kinds of other books too, but these are the ones I've done in my retirement years.
But don't they kind of strike? You feel like, I know how that works. I know something about this person, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what inspires me about all of our ancestors is that right from the founders on to the present is how they handled adversity. And when bad things would happen, they didn't just give up or get angry and that kind of thing. They adapted and stuck with it. I mean, the character traits of those founders and then the others that followed are what really impress me and inspire me.
And well, they should. For me, it's George Bush, his persistence. And you know how smart he was, who he brought out money and he brought out plantings of all sorts in their wagon trade. So
yeah, he was a very successful rancher in Missouri where they started off. And he helped finance some of the other family members to come on the Oregon Trail.
Well, now as you finish these books, and they're from Gorham Press, is that right?
Yeah, Gorham Printing. They're not a publisher, but they're a printer and book designers.
Okay.
And
Okay. So, what have people said about it?
Well, well, everybody loves it in Tumwater. Of course, that's makes their history come alive. People want to see what used to be here at that certain site. You know, where was my house? Who owned it before me, and that kind of thing. So it's all these kind of stories and old businesses that don't exist anymore, and you just see ruins of them, maybe like the old Olympia Brewing Company and that kind of thing. There's still some archives around, I guess you'd say, the old photos, but don't people that move here from coming off from California, wherever they're coming from, they don't realize how important of a town this is. This little tiny town of Tumwater has two things that make it statewide significance. One is the first American community north of the Columbia, permanent one, and that we don't compete with Steilacoom because they were the first incorporated, and we don't argue with them, but we were the first settlement. And so that, and the other thing is the Olympia Brewing Company, the home of Olympia beer, and the Schmidt family. And that was a huge part of putting us on the map, so to speak. And that company and sold beer became one of the top 10 brewers in the nation, competing with the Budweisers and the Coors and all those kind of outfits.
Now,
so what about on the map?
What about you, though? I mean, now, did you always know you were famous?
Never thought of myself as famous. I grew up at the property, and we still had the remnants of the old barn and the old shack and the old blacksmith shop and those kind of things. We played around there. Just thought it was normal. We were very low income. I mean, we were always strapped for finances, but us kids didn't know that. We just enjoyed playing on the property. We had 25 acres to run around, and the neighbor kids would come over, and we'd have play army and all kinds of stuff, you know. So it was I didn't think of myself as famous except for having that road named for us. And we thought, my grandpa was still alive. He was in his 80s when I was about 8th grade when he passed away. He used to tell all these stories, and I wasn't interested as a kid. But now I kick myself like crazy thinking, oh, I wish I'd have written it down or had a tape recorder or something to hear his stories. Some of them were passed down, and I do have a few of them, but I wish I'd have had more interest when I was younger.
Well, you know, kids don't. It doesn't seem like it's worth their precious time, you know.
Yeah.
So, well, because now you have written more books about Tumwater than anybody else. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, there's nobody else that's written. In fact, that's what's inspired me way back in 1980 or so when I first got involved. Is I didn't find any books that were specifically about Tumwater. And here we were, the first American community, and racism in Oregon helped inspire this new territory, Washington, to be started. You know, that kind of forced the people of mixed race to come north and that kind of thing. And so the British, they were, race wasn't an issue for them. They had Chinese laborers, they had Indian tribes, they had Scottish people, they had Asians and Japanese, and I mean just a multiracial thing. And so there was no racism involved with in fact, that was their business, was multiracial things with that. It's a big trade and so on. and farming too.
So how have people reacted to your books, though, to finding out all this that they didn't know?
Oh, they love it. Yeah, they've asked me to come and speak. In fact, you and I got to speak at the Tacoma Yacht Club just
It was
a
fun.
couple months ago. Yeah. And then just yesterday, or no, day before yesterday, I got to speak at a group of former teachers that have a group that puts on junior programs for the elementary school kids. And so it was there, 1940 is when they started that. And now they're really, well, they asked me to come and talk about Tumwater schools. So I took out my old book on Tumwater School District history and kind of got myself remembering some of the stories that I told there. And some of the things that came across, I shared little short things like little Percy's mother took her child to the one-room schoolhouse and gave the young teacher a long list of instructions. She said, "My Percy is a very sensitive child. Don't ever punish him. Just hit the boy next to him, and that will frighten Percy and keep him obedient." So those kind of stories went over pretty well.
You realize that story is not restricted to one place.
Yeah, well,
because we knew that one too.
One legend shared was in celebration of a new school, a teacher decorated the math classroom with a beautiful Boston fern plant, and the next day it grew square roots.
Oh.
Yes. So there you go. And I have a lot of these, but they went over pretty well with all these retired teachers in that group. And that was at the Lacey Community Center. I did that.
They like those stories in the book.
Very much so, yeah. And a lot of them grew up here too, and so that brought back a lot of memories. I get a lot of good comments from people that are in these audiences, and they're asking questions or what do you know about the brewery and my uncle that worked there and all these kinds of things. It's great fun. I've learned a lot more by just giving these talks.
Oh, I would think so. So people are sharing information with you too.
Yes. And they turn into nice little short stories, and I put bad jokes in between and make a book out of them.
Yes. Well, Hit the Boy Next to Him is not original. I just want you to know that.
No, that's right. It's right. Yeah.
So anyway, well, I think it's interesting that people are actually enjoying finding out about the place where they live. I mean, because it seems like, sort of tried to ignore it all. I mean, we didn't do much. Now this was Montana, so.
Oh yeah.
It's different, but small town, just the same.
Sure.
So, well, what if this is, and I just made this up, so if you don't know, it's okay. But what if people had some family history and they had your books? How might be a good way to get started, keeping track of the history and enjoying it and all that?
Well, I put out a lot of books and stories and videos too that's on the City of Tumwater website and YouTube channel that they're on. So these little short videos talk about different aspects of Tumwater's history through the years. So they can go on to, if they're not into reading, they might be into videos. And so either way, they can learn something. It's a very short attention span in this modern culture, so you have to do in short segments, and that goes over pretty well, especially if you add the humor and that kind of thing that helps them say, well, what's he going to say next?
I think people are comforted almost by the fact that they were real people. I mean, they weren't like, as I always say, like Lewis and Clark. I mean, what a pair of losers. They are like, they look this way, or perhaps they look that way. Well, they're not doing anything. Well, then I found out, I didn't know, I think it's in my book, so, that they had food poisoning so severe that Captain Lewis lay by the side of the road 5 days and couldn't even move. And for some reason, we like him better knowing that,
He's a real person, not just a. Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure you do know, but why they had food poisoning. And I just so related to it because the local Native American women had what amounted to a hot pot, you know, like we have now, and it was actually dug into the soil and
Yeah.
with coals, and they could you know, had the thing there. So when the Lewis and Clark party came along looking for something to eat, they said, "We're glad to share, but it takes 5 days for the camas plant to be safe to eat." Now,
Yeah.
Lewis, and I know I had a kernel of my very own, you can't do a thing with it. We said, "Oh, well, never mind, we'll be fine." And they ate it, and they weren't
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. There's a lot of adjustment for these pioneers too. They hadn't been around seafood because they were Midwest farmers.
All
And so they
right.
didn't know about clams and oysters and gooey ducks, especially gooey ducks, so ugly, scaly necks coming up out of the sand. And they said, "You're going to eat those things," or skunk cabbage root and stuff like that. It just didn't sound very appetizing, but they learned. And it was thanks to the native tribes. Our first settlers survived the first winters.
But I don't think they could have otherwise.
Yeah, and the British helped too at the Fort
Yeah.
Nisqually. Doctor told me.
I love what I love about your books, though, is that they do make them so down to earth, literally in many ways. That I think people do look for, you know, what about you and me? How can this? How does this matter? You know,
Yeah, you can relate to them more. Yeah, sure, that's right. They're real people and made mistakes, you know.
well, no, it's just what Colonel does. Well, you won't believe that we have practically talked our way through this lovely thing through this already. So therefore, it is now time when I want you to tell me your favorite story from one of your books, or it could be someone else's story, but that would be very silly of you. But
I know the one thing you talked me into was don't just talk about other people, but talk about your own family too. And there's two different tracks that I have. One is my pioneer roots. One is through Jesse Ferguson and Uncle Jesse and the Oregon Trail trip. And the other is our Trospers, the Trosper name. And we've gone back to 1700s in North Carolina is where they started out as far back as we can trace. And they went with Daniel Boone to Kentucky. And they didn't go all the way to Boonesboro. They stopped somewhere up near the Cumberland Gap and at a little chapel they built and called the little town Trosper. And I've never been there, and it's still on some of the maps. It's not as big as Maytown, I don't suppose, but it's we have a lot of roots back there. And then they went to Missouri from there and kept going west, and they ended up in Kansas. And back by 1892 then, Uncle Jesse invited the Trospers, who he was uncle to us. So he said, "Come on up here. I have a lot of property you can buy from me." And they came. And so all these connections over the generations is just fun to trace. So there's the Trosper trace, and then there's the Oregon Trail trace with the Simmons Bush Party and Uncle Jesse.
That is wonderful. I really love that. I think you should go.
In fact, we'll be talking about that, I guess, during our upcoming talk at Panorama.
It was strange you should mention that. Yes. That would be good. Yes, and we are looking forward to having a really happy day at Panorama Assisted Living Community in Lacey. And Don and I are going to be talking about our books and our relations. And did I ever tell you about my uncle who was the singing sheriff of Multnomah County?
You have mentioned him, yeah, and there's some other good characters.
Yeah, we got lots of good characters. And so anyway, but before we get to any of the good characters, this is June 5th in the Panorama, what do I want to call it? Auditorium. The auditorium.
Oh, yeah.
It's from 2 to 4. And we will have our books available for you because you will definitely want.
In fact, I'll dress up in my pioneer garb to look the part, you know.
And he's adorable. So and so we'll have some fun. And so we do enjoy getting out and doing the program together. But Don does a lot of schools and educational things. And
Yeah.
so follow him around.
Yeah, there's a store in Tumwater that sells these books too. If they want to go out and buy them, or Thompson Furniture on Capitol Boulevard in Tumwater is where they can always get copies of the books.
And my books are in bookstores. How do you like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yep, yep.
And they will be on the 5th. They'll be available for
Good,
lengthy autographs if you
good,
want.
good.
And
All
it's the
right.
only thing that if you want the autographs, you've just about got to turn up. So, Don, my dear, this has been so much fun. If people want to find your books, I know you said it, but say it again. How do they find your books?
Well, go to Thompson Furniture if you're going to do it in person, but you can also mail order them by getting onto my email address of dontrosper@outlook.com, and I can send you the forms or give you the information about how to get the books and get them signed and mailed to you if you like that. Or I can, maybe if you're in the county, I can deliver them personally.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah.
You'd like Don.
Oh, yes. I always love it. Yeah.
It's really true. Well, thank you for, as we say, stopping by today. And this was a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to seeing you and a lot of our friends on June 5th. And we'll see what happens next. And this, of course, okay, this has been a production of the SOB radio network. And SOB, as you know, stands for Spunky Old Broads. And you might not have known that, but that's what it stands for. And all the hosts are women over 50. How about that? Anyway, this is Dorothy Wilhelm, and we'll see you again soon. Oh, and Karen, our producer. Tell me your last name again, Karen.
Schlomer.
Sure it is. Okay, anyhow, goodbye now.